Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Nonsense News Nation. I am one of the two hosts of this podcast. My second host, he'll introduce himself right now.
Brandon Ellis, by the way, in case you didn't know.
There he is, the wonderful, the talented, amazing Brandon Ellis.
Oh, shucks.
And, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very, very special episode of Nonsense News Nation because we are joined by a very special guest. He is a man of many trades. He has been a television director, film director, and professor for many, many years. He has worked on countless projects, including Full House, the hit film My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and of course, the focal point and subject of today's interview, the 2004 21st Century Fox film, Fat Albert. Mr. Joel Zwick, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
This is
today.
a trip. I love this. This is great.
Hi there,
Awesome,
Mr. Zwick, or as Fat
We're
Albert
very
would
happy
say,
to have you.
hey, hey, hey.
Hey, hey,
That's Fat
hey.
Albert.
Hey, 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 indeed.
Hey, 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 indeed. And I had a hey, 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 hey off. When Cosby did one little scene for me in Fat Albert, and I just begged him, I said, why can't you and Fat Albert have a hey, 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 hey off? I mean, you did hey, hey, hey when you were Fat
he was like the
Albert
original,
in your
the original
cartoon.
actor, yeah.
And now you got Keenan doing, and they did. And they did a hey, hey, hey routine in the middle of the speech. I finally begged them to just stick it in.
Who did the best hey, 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 if you had to choose in that moment, in time?
I got to tell you, Keenan did great work, but Cosby, the original, it's hard to match up against the one you've been listening to for 17 years. But it was he imitated Cosby quite well doing Fat Albert, so it all worked out nice.
All right. Well,
When I watched the film a couple hours ago, the first time I had noticed both of them doing the hey, hey, hey. I didn't pick up on it through the many other times.
It's fairly quick.
I watched the film,
but
that
I mean, if
leads
you're a
me
fan,
to-
it will bring a smile on your face.
That's it, but it's the moment. I had to fight for that moment. That's why it meant something to me, because Bill did not want to do that. He just didn't want to get into a competition with him about hey, hey, hey.
Well, I didn't realize that there'd be a fight about it. But
he just didn't think it should be done, and eventually he just did it for me.
Well, I'm glad that he finally
it's there.
submitted because
it's forever in history.
It's
You did
there.
it.
It makes
Congratulations.
sense. The hey, hey, hey scene leads to something I want to say. The reason that we're even doing this, the reason that I reached out to you, Joel, was because growing up, I was 7 years old when this film came out.
I guess that makes me 6.
It was one of the few. Brandon is a year younger than I.
Guilty.
This movie, Fat Albert, was one of the few DVDs that my parents actually bought me, and I watched it over and over and over again as a kid, and didn't revisit it until actually last month. I stumbled across it, rewatched it, and I'm like, this is even better than I remember as a kid. And like I said, I wanted to reach out to you and talk to you about this film. I'd love to talk about this movie. Brandon, I think Brandon is going to ask you the second question he has. Isn't that right?
Yeah, well, Fat Albert wasn't really your first rodeo. You did other things.
No.
So could you tell us a little bit about your work before Fat Albert and then eventually what got you to that and maybe 20th Century Fox?
Oh, God, how do these things happen? Luck, it's always about connections. It's always about people. Somewhere along the way, you run into somebody, and that somebody gets an opportunity and drags you along. And then another room with other people. If you can prove yourself worthwhile, door opens up, and you step through and see what that next world brings you. And that's kind of how it worked with me. I mean, I was the one who actually found Hanks. Hanks didn't for me. That was I cast him for the pilot of Bosom Buddies when he was working on I think as an understudy in off-Broadway theater. But it was Hanks who basically 20-odd years later, when I thought of getting out of TV and sent him a script, it was an independent kind of a movie, and he said, "What's this, Joel?" And I said, "Well, Tom, I think I'm going to get out of TV. I smell the flattening of the curve is not flattening anymore; it's starting to descend." And so I said I thought I could get him. Maybe I can do individual directing for feature films, for comedies. Maybe that I have some traction. He said, "Oh, really? Well, I've got something I want you to direct," and sent me the script of My Big Fat Greek Wedding. That's all it took. I didn't have a sales pitch. That was the story. Tom was going to have me directing it. He was going to have Nia writing it and Nia starring in it, and that was the package he sold.
Rest
and they
is
all
history.
could go to hell if that was the rest is history.
That's all it took. Wow.
That basically, for reasons that I'm kind of not proud of, but I did positive things about it. Back in the day, when they were starting to do black sitcoms early on, they hadn't developed enough black directors because there was no black product. They never saw the vision of themselves doing it, so they thought it was a job they could do. So basically, they went to me because I was a street kid from Brooklyn, and they thought that my consciousness of how one grows up in a street with buddies and pals and nicknames and all that kind of stuff would be useful. So I got all kinds of opportunities because of that. I got to do the Jamie Foxx show and the Wayans brothers, and I did I can't remember, Parenthood, and I did Family Matters, and I did all these essentially black sitcoms during that time. But I built up ADs who were black. I built up script supervisors who were black, and eventually they got a chance to direct and move on into careers of their own. But essentially, that was what was going on in that time. They hadn't developed any black people realizing they could get jobs if they could just learn, study, go to school, whatever it was that it was going to take. So anyway, I'd done all these black things. And I was saying earlier that when Fat Albert was ready to go, it was another director who was doing Fat Albert. And they were 1 week away from principal photography, from starting to shoot. They had it all cast and everything. And I don't know if they had all the contracts yet. I can't believe they did. But the fact is, they were all ready to go, and Cosby didn't want that director. This guy wanted to modern up the characters, make some of the gang around the street corner, the Fat Albert and his boys, more modern in what they sounded like. And Cosby said, no. The only reason I will do this movie is because I want Fat Albert, the show that I put on the air for 17 years, to have a movie. So he heard about me, and he said, let me meet with this Joel. He's a sitcom director. I like that. I like a sitcom director just tell the story. They don't futz around. They're not looking to make any kind of a statement. And Cosby and I hit it off well enough so that I took over, recast it. I believe there might have been some roles that were still there from previous, but recast the whole thing and just did it. As I see it now, that was a big movie. I mean, I look at it now and I think, my goodness gracious, the number of big, as we call them, block scenes, races and parties at night and all kinds of stuff, dance numbers.
Well, we're going to talk about that
so
party
much
later.
Going on.
Yes.
The party.
That was
the party.
incredible. That is the best scene.
It is, in our opinion,
that's a good scene.
Best scene.
Good.
Good
Don't
scene.
undercut
That's
yourself.
That's
we'll get
right.
to it. Now you were speaking about.
So I wound up with the movie.
You were speaking about how Cosby, he wanted to keep the original vision. And it's so easy for when you're making films that adapt old properties to make it modern. You just look at like the Alvin and the Chipmunks movie and they're hip-hopping and all that.
Yes, that's exactly what he didn't want to happen.
So,
he wanted those characters to be the characters he wrote and had been developing for 17 years. He wanted Dumb Donald to be a certain way, and he wanted all those characters to be as he remembered them and as he created them when he first created them. But other than that, he was not hands-on at all. Matter of fact, Cosby only showed up to the shoot one day during the track meet because he ran track for his college, Temple, as you know. So he came to see the track meet scene, and then essentially he showed up to shoot the scene which he was in. And that was it. He wasn't pushing. He couldn't care less. He let me do the job, which is truly remarkable because I didn't know what kind of level of input he was going to demand. He didn't. He thought, okay, I'm trusting you. Go for it.
No, that's interesting because I watched a little bit of the show growing up. My parents had it on DVD, so I saw that before I saw the movie, and it definitely got into the spirit of the show. So it's interesting that his control was sort of keep it to the original, make it kind of older with the characters, and that's kind of it. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Was it
essentially, although we did introduce, as I recall, but the cast did this. The cast decided, hey, let's do this new school, and they went into a beatbox kind of a presentation of one of the things. So we did upgrade and modernize
it came naturally. They weren't just always.
It was evolved. And matter of fact, naturally, the actors came up to me and said, we got a great idea. Can we try this? What if instead of doing traditional, we did a beatbox version of it, and I can do this and I can do this, and within 5 seconds those clowns had put it together. Like you couldn't breathe that fast. That's how fast they were able to pull that together. Because I allowed them the freedom to speak so that the characters had a legitimacy to them, even though the words were feeling pretty much like what you expect those characters to have to say when they have to say it. But, somebody said to me once that, and I think it's probably more than that 80% of directing is casting. And I think it could be higher than that. Because the two things you've got going on that are primary creative forces is you've got the writing and you've got the acting. The director, choreographer are all secondary creators. We can do nothing without the actors, and we can do nothing without the script. So we're dependent upon somehow creating a system that allows those actors to imbue themselves into the script so that everything gets elevated to the best it can possibly be. And if you pull that off, you have a better chance at a decent movie than at a flop, because you have at least actors who look like they're doing work out there. They're enjoying themselves. They're living it. So that was it. So I wound up then doing Fat Albert, and we had to. There were problems in the concept wasn't a problem. The problem was we didn't have the funds to truly materialize on the level that it could have been. Some of the concepts, like the characters fading away. Well, fading away is a very interesting thing to do. How do I, as a director with limited funds, create fading away? How do I fade them away? So we determined that we would simply, at various points in the script, modify their costumes to get them looking paler and paler. Right. And every once in a while, we throw somebody at them who was wearing their look when it was really fresh, so you could see that they were getting dried out and drained out. We tried to do one thing where we were starting to see through his hand, I think, at one particular point. And I think that was, I couldn't follow it up. And to some degree, I wish we got rid of it, but I couldn't get it out. Because that was a place that you could expect that a movie like this could possibly go with money. You could get these people dissolving literally on screen, but that's very expensive. That's a lot of CGI work, and we didn't have the budget.
You just made do with what you have, because I know in the movie there's always like a line or two, did you bleach your clothes or something like that? And
that's right.
That was the equivalent of we're fading away. Exactly right.
That was exactly what we were doing. We made one character, the guy who was concerned about, I think Keith Robinson played the guy who was basically concerned about the fact that we're fading. We're cartoon characters. This isn't our world. We got to get out of here. And I like that. Conceptually, it's a brilliant idea. And I like the way the cartoon came out of the reality of the girl crying and the tear falls on her remote. And all of a sudden, Fat Albert, who has to help people, comes flying through the TV to help her.
That's quite a scene. I can't imagine
and all of his cronies come with him.
Iconic scene. I just want to say a couple things. Obviously, you talk about the budget was limited because a lot of the money had already been spent.
But they spent
the previous director. Yes. And I'm sure it didn't help that a lot of the budget had to go to the animated scenes as well. So can you talk a little bit about? I know animation. I'm sorry. I just know animation's very expensive, and I just want to know what your experience was with using some of the budget for the animated scenes, and then,
Well, it just had to be what it had to be. We budgeted the animation at a certain amount. I can't tell you what it is because I really don't know. And but basically, we had determined that we had to use old-time animation. We were not going to be doing what some of those guys are doing today. We were going to use the old, and we went to Disney, and we found some of the old guys who had been drawing these things for years. And we had them draw this movie, so we had that look of a hand-drawn animation. And like with all animations, we recorded soundtracks and of verbals and things that had to go into it, and then they stuck that into characters' mouths, and we were off and running. But it was a tough one because that was something you have no control over. You see the animated figures, they draw it for you. And they say, well, this is what Fat Albert's going to look like, and this is what this guy is going to look like, and you okay them. You go, okay, that makes sense to me. I see no problem with that. And then the next time you see it, it's pretty well full blown. And you have very little time to correct anything you'd like to correct because you can't afford to correct it. Right. That was the problem. It was not that we couldn't get it done well once. I couldn't get in there and say, oops, oh, dear God. Like, here's a one, see if you guys spotted it. What was the biggest faux pas in the cartoons, of the Fat Albert cartoons? What was the biggest? Because the fact that nobody notices gets me crazy because it's so blatant to me.
Well, I mean, to me, it looks great. The animation looks very well done.
It is well done, but if you notice in the animation, Fat Albert does not have a belt.
Oh,
he has a belt.
Well, I'm not really looking down there.
He didn't have a belt. They forgot. That's right. They forgot to put the belt on. The cost of it was going to be much too expensive to basically go back and put his belt on him.
So you didn't realize that until after everything had been completed?
Oh, no, after I saw the movie 4 times, I went, oh, my heavens. So, yeah, no, it's true, but that's what these things are so much fun about, is that very few people other than the person who directed it looks at it and goes, oh, dear God, how did we get away with that one? That was a big mistake. But, no, I thought the animation was terrific. I really did.
So, too, yeah. There weren't really any kind of animation errors, and the voice acting was great. I mean, like...
Very good, yes.
Yeah, very good. And I didn't even notice the thing about the belt.
Now we will.
I see his pants.
Thank you for that.
To me, I mean, that's like... It's a feature that's, it's definitely important, but it's not so important that...
The movie could go on. The movie could go on, definitely.
Thank goodness.
And to bring it back real quick about when you're talking about how this concept of, the character is going to be fading away because they have to return back into their cartoon.
They got their land. That's right. They have to go back into... And they can only go back during their show, which I thought that was very clever. I liked that a lot. So that every once in a while they get there at the wrong time and get stuck for another day. I thought that was pretty cool,
Yeah.
There was the one scene in the movie where one of the characters notices he's fading away, looks at his hand, and I always thought it was a little weird because all the other characters start looking at their hands,
weren't
and none of their hands. Yeah, I was like a little confused.
It was this way.
Well.
Yeah, I wanted to get that rid of it, and I couldn't get rid of it because I would have lost a critical moment of the character saying, "Oh no, this is serious. We are fading away." I could have done it without seeing through his hand just as easily. But that's afterthought. I'm going to tell you, happens a lot. But it was. I watch it every once in a while. I think, my goodness gracious, there was a lot of production in that movie, and I think we only had about a 28-day shoot for that. So it wasn't like we were sitting around shooting for months and months and months. We were putting that stuff out pretty good. We had good choreographers. I had a lot of support there, but it was something else. The party scene.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but going to that, now we're talking about cartoon characters, and we're putting them into the modern real world. So you have to be conscious. Okay, they're cartoon characters. They got to be a little wacky, a little lively. How'd you go about doing that? Making it sort of live action, but also cartoony at the same time. Was there difficulty with that?
Essentially, their characters were their characters, and the same characters that they had in their cartoon world was the same characters that they were playing out here. So if somebody was a bit dorky, they were dorky. If they were still dumb, they were dumb. We had plot twists like Dumb Donald getting a brain all of a sudden and going to the library to read up on 27 volumes of African American history.
Yeah.
I mean, we had things like that going on, or that Mumble Mouth, whatever.
Mushmouth.
Thank you. He can speak now. He can speak, and the other guy can play basketball, and this one, it's pretty.
Sorry. Something I want to ask about, all those like kind of quote unquote like evolutions of their character. Was that something you think Bill Cosby would not like? How much leeway did he give you with the characters? Did he want them to stay exactly like how they were, or did he give you? Obviously, you talk about the scene where the cast wants to do the new school rap. Stuff like that. Like, was Bill Cosby okay with that, or you didn't really?
Bill Cosby was not at all unhappy with the fact that we modernized the Fat Albert song. He was not. He liked it a lot. He was not unhappy with that. He thought that all that stuff needed to be done to refresh the project. What he didn't want was the gang, the old gang on the street corner in the cartoon, turning into a hip hop. He didn't mind the one moment of the beatbox thing.
Right.
You know, but they were still their own characters doing it. They didn't change the different. No, I never even thought about it, to be quite honest. It seemed like whatever character they were playing, they were going to sustain that character, whether they were in cartoon. But once they got out of the cartoon, they were not back in cartoon until one by one they went back into the set, you know, as they tried to get back to their show.
Speaking to these characters, I know we spoke about each character having those little character moments. Was that something you really tried to convey, where it's, while this is the Fat Albert movie, you still have 6 other people that are with him? Were you trying to get a little more from them than maybe you would have otherwise gotten the cartoon, or added more to their lore a bit?
For some reason, you're right. That's what happened, but I don't know that I was just busy telling a story. I think that's why Cosby liked me, and I think that's why Hanks liked me from Big Fat Greek Wedding. I was not caught up in any of that stuff. If I thought the performances were performing well and seemed to be in the tone that I felt the movie needed to operate in, because I think what you're talking about is tone. And once you establish a tone, you got to hold on to the tone. Otherwise, you're going to have half a comedy, half a drama, half an adventure, half a dance show, and none of them are going to meld together. The only thing that melded them together was this gang of misfits who came out of the TV set. And if they could, they had to be the same cartoon characters except brought to life. As a matter of fact, the first scene is when they stand up and they realize, oh my God, look at this, my mouth, my hips, my heart, my heart. And they're starting to realize that they're now flesh and blood, but they're still the cartoon characters. They've just been fleshed and blooded out. So I could have done that. Somebody could do a movie of Fat Albert and not have the cartoons at all.
Right.
And the characters would still have to play kind of the way they played in my movie, I think. Okay. If you were going to be honest with the characters and not let them get completely modernized and crazy.
And speaking of tone, I'll transition here. There's a lot of energy in this movie. This movie is big on just being energetic and being, especially the party scene. So can you talk about the choreography of the party scene and, you know, where it was filmed and what elements went into that? And that's because me and Brandon said we really think that was one of the best
highlight.
scenes, if not the best scene in the whole movie.
I mean,
it's a good scene. The fact remains, what I think happened was that we were on a back lot, and I think the back lot may have been, I don't recall where on the 20th Century Fox lot it could have been. We could have borrowed out, rented out Paramount back lot, something like that. So we had control of the entire environment, which was critical. And then, obviously, we had the piece structured, you know, where we did the opening when he comes up and starts to call up Fat Albert, and Fat Albert has to start doing a modernized version of the song, and then they get into a dance.
All the characters just knew the same dance. It was so epic.
Yeah, and basically, I set them up. I said that the choreographer was great. What's her name? Robinson, I think. Faith Robinson. She's one of the best going. And basically, but I said, let's start them up on the top so they can use their legs on top of the railings. You know, every once in a while I throw in a suggestion, but she was operating far above my pay level at that point. She was quite something, and she was controlling a lot of people. But you know, she was quite talented. But my style has always been. I never thought of myself as a director who was a visionary. I think we talked about this early. Right. I'm a systems person. And my belief in my system is if I can somehow create an atmosphere where everybody who I've hired can do their best work and be the best they can possibly be, not because they're doing what I want them to do necessarily, because I'm able to coordinate what is that they do best into a package that can work. And that's what I've tried to do. So I've realized this just recently that I'm a systems guy. To me, it's a system. If I can figure out how something is done, I can find a way perhaps to do it more efficiently, perhaps to get more out of it, and in such you create time, and time is money, and that's why my Big Fat Greek Wedding was a 24-day shoot, guys. 24 days.
24 days. Fat Albert was more, according to you.
Yeah, about 29 days from that Fat Albert. But Fat Albert had all these huge production numbers. My Big Fat Greek Wedding had a big wedding at the end, which, by the way, was 60% of the people in that wedding at the end of my Big Fat Wedding were Nia Vardalos' family.
Oh.
They came in from Australia, they came in from Canada, they came in from all over the world to be at that wedding in my Big Fat Greek Wedding. And I remember talking about it, and the ADs explained the scene to the extras. You know, now this is a wedding, and I stopped them and said, listen, how many of you people have been to a Greek wedding before? And most of them raised their hands and said, good, you know what to do, let's shoot.
Well, I wish me and Brandon could have been there. We would have been kid extras.
I would have put you in as kid extras easily. Why not?
Well, we're honored. We're flattered. But it seems that...
Oh, if we could have been extras in Fat Albert.
Oh, no, that'd be the dream. It seems that you got a lot of people that were passionate together. This wasn't just maybe one or two singular visions. This is a lot of people that looked at this and said, you know what? Let's make something interesting. And I want to talk about some of those bigger scenes and maybe see sort of what mindset was behind this with some of these other people. Of course, you're talking about the dance scene. You had a choreographer. What about something like the track scene with Fat Albert running, or the skateboard scene that was so energetic, or even the scene where he's in the mall, and just doing all these exciting, energetic scenes? How are they made, and who was involved there?
Okay, I brought in my stunt coordinator, who worked for me for many years in TV, Buck McDancer, and he brought in his talented crew of stunt people, plus somebody who could double Fat Albert, somebody who could double this one. There were some he brought in specifically because they were the doublers, and others who are going to be various people on the skateboard who he knocks over or goes down steps or goes flying over and basically some of that is a combination of stunt work, but it's all practical. There was no CGI involved here. There was no visual effects. We made that happen. There was somebody on that skateboard that went over that thing. It didn't happen to be Keenan, but it happened to be his double going over. So all that stuff was shot. You had to find ways to shoot it so that you could be sure you had the sequence and that system.
How long did that take?
But essentially, that was probably about, I would say we probably completed that in about an hour and a half, 2 hours. We had to move. We were not fooling around. I mean, and I had a crew that could do it, which was essentially a very, very fortunate thing. I brought in a lot of my TV people because despite what anybody says, they work faster, they work better, they work more efficiently because they've always had to.
They're used to the time crunch.
The guys on single cameras couldn't do it. They're used to the crunch, they're used to the speed, they're used to options, they're used to everything that people who've been crewing feature work for years wouldn't have any idea of. There's a pace they're used to. They deal with that pace, not the same pace as the television crew. They really move it a little bit. So it was, but once again, it was the guys became, they bonded as a family, and included the two girls, Kylie and Kyla Pratt. They basically bonded with everybody. They had something in common. They all being black. I mean, that's a help. How often does a bunch of black actors get together to do a movie that's essentially a black movie? So they were very much enthused by their chances to do this, you know. And Keenan is, besides being very funny, and he's a good guy, he's a collecting guy. He is somebody that keeps everybody together. He's a team player.
Well, that's kind of perfect for the character, if you think about it.
Yeah, I love that guy. I love Kenan Thompson.
Yeah, he's terrific, and God bless him. He found a 15-year career on Saturday Night Live. 15 years he's been on that show. God bless him.
He's amazing.
God bless him. And he's a very talented guy, and he knew where Fat Albert was. He just knew in his soul where Fat Albert was. Right. And you know, my job is not to interfere with that process, but to bring it out. And as I see him doing things that I think make the character more unique, I essentially let him know that I love that. Keep going, keep it going. And every once in a while, but very rarely, will I come with, guys, I don't think there's anything in this. Let's not do this. Let's come up with something else, you know.
I guess that's the best thing you can do as a director most of the time, is let your actors find their role and then step in if you feel like.
You're absolutely correct. It's not easy to do. I'm afraid that the film industry tends to create more auteurs and filmmakers, and not enough filmmakers who are actors-directors. You know, the actors-directors that we always knew were Mike Nichols, because he worked in theater before he came onto film. We had a lot of them, and even in TV there are some people who do very well because they're actors, directors, and other people who have to get into other forms because their talents take them into more visionary work. You know, my thing was solving episode by episode.
I guess that's the best strategy to apply.
That's what they needed. That's what they got, and I think you did a good job. I think you did a great job.
I sustained the career. I sustained the career doing it, so you can't complain about that, you know, considering I had no particular goals or thoughts of ever having a career. Different than you guys who be motivated to do something. I didn't have it. I had nothing. I worked a little bit as an actor and not a good one. And then luckily I started at La Mama Theater in New York that was a bastion of avant-garde theater in the 60s and 70s. And they gave me a chance to direct. I don't know why they gave me a chance to direct to this day, but it was a successful outing. And by golly, from that point on, I was a director at La Mama for 6 years and then moved on to Broadway. And then Broadway took me to L.A. town. And the joke was how I went from La Mama to Laverne and Shirley. Particularly how I made that sweep of a move. But it didn't seem like such a big problem to me. It seems like the same thing. Yeah, it's a hell of a ride, but for some reason I had my system thinking through things. I could figure it out quickly. The girls liked me because I was energetic. And that's what I do. I force energy into situations just by my presence.
Just look at the Fat Albert.
Yeah, do you feel like you had that helped your presence bring life to the movie? Because, my God, it's very lively.
Yeah, I think that probably does. I have a feeling that other than the fact that I'm into systems that pay off for me, energy. I just have energy. I've always had energy. If I didn't know how to direct, if I didn't know how to do anything, I would still have energy. And that's worked out for me quite well. Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams, when they got me on Laverne and Shirley, thought they'd gone to heaven. I could keep up with them. I had a New York energy and a New York speed, especially Penny from the Bronx. She thought this was the best thing that happened to her in her life, and they took me to school. They showed me how the job is done, and then moved on and ran into Hanks and a little bit of Robin Williams, who was an event.
Rest in
all
peace.
Myself. But it was energy that did it, and the New York smarts can get you through some stuff, They like the New York smarts, and since we had a lot of actors who'd show up in various shows who were New York-based actors, because that's where most of the training in that period of time were coming from. We weren't getting any training much in L.A. Now you have New York teachers who are teaching acting here in L.A. because actors their creative instincts can't survive doing television. They can't survive their creative instincts by doing the same character for 6 years, or by being a post office man, or by being a pizza delivery boy. That's not going to get you fulfilling your need as a craftsman. So all of a sudden classes start to come up all on the West Coast where actually major working actors were going back to those classes so they could remember what it was that they loved about what they were doing. Because there's two sides to success. The first is you made it. The second is they won't let you go. Once they decide that this is what you do, well, by golly, you got to be somebody very big and very important to let them know that you're not going to do it. Then fine, we'll find somebody else who will do it. I mean, I had that after my Big Fat Greek Wedding. They came after me. They weren't sure what I did or how I got that to be successful as it did, but they started to hand me scripts, and I didn't want to do any of their movies. They were basically teenage dum-dum movies. And I wasn't going to put 2 years of my life into a teenage dum-dum movie. So I would turn down these movies, and within a short period of time, maybe a season, that was the last they didn't offer anymore because they just determined that I didn't want to play their Hollywood game. And I didn't. And if Fat Albert that hadn't come along, which was about a different circuitous route, I would have, I don't know what I was going to do. Theater, go back. I still do some theater, so I still stay with theater and live with theater. I still work, and especially now that I'm retired, quote unquote. Although I'm still at the point in my life, if somebody really begged me and really needed me, I might just be able to do it. But
maybe Brandon and I can make a film, and we'll call on
you. Or just a Fat Albert 2. We'll be on our knees and beg.
There you go.
Fat Albert 2.
Fat Albert 2. No, but I appreciate the fact you like them. I like that movie, too. I see the problems it had in it. Wonderful ensemble work. And the thing I liked best, which was my creation, I decided that these characters from the world of Toon would bond together. They never would leave each other's side when they're walking down the streets, so they're always moving as a clump. If you notice that, they never separated clumping. I thought that was pretty funny.
Right, they're like one big entity.
Well, it works very well because all of the characters and cast have great chemistry. So
yes, they did. They really liked each other. They were working and having a good time. They had trailer was it? Somebody's trailer, probably Keenan's. And they would just hang out in Keenan's trailer and play games and play music and sing songs with each other and have a grand old time. They weren't paying much attention to the bloody script at that point, but they were getting some major bonding work done back then. And on occasion, I would go back there and play with them for a few minutes. You know, but you're going to like this one. My name during the shoot of Fat Albert, here it goes, was T.O. Jay-Z, the original Jay-Z.
They called you the original Jay-Z?
You know what? I could see it. I could see it.
Yeah, T.O.
Well, yeah.
Both of us are Brooklyn boys. Both Jay-Z's are Brooklyn boys, so I guess that's fair. But that was it, you know. They were
having
a
fun.
Community.
Yeah.
They were having a good time, and having a great opportunity, which young black men were not getting at that time. They just were not being portrayed in movies and roles that might be meaningful, that might be fun, you know?
Well, the thing about...
Do you think that was one of the first major feature films that had a predominantly all-black cast?
I can't believe that. I don't know the history that well, but I can't believe that earlier on we didn't have certainly movies with major input from black cast, but I don't know that there was before it that there was one, but I never heard about it. So I guess if it had been the first, somebody would have said something. Oh, by the way, did you know? I never got that, so I can't imagine.
It seems like it was an all-black cast aside from one character, like Reggie's friend, who was barely in the movie.
Oh, yes, yes, indeed. Maybe a father character who was on the pier when they were at the playground, you know, going through all the rides.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you're Fat Albert, you got to get back onto your show because they're picking on your brother. Who is this?
I remember him. He's only on screen for about 30 seconds. So
30, but you got to know that I hired him because he had done a role for me in Bosom Buddies.
Oh, really?
He had been many, many years ago one of the people who were there for the for the college reunion. Tom and Peter went back to a college reunion or something, and Tom was all flirty about the fact that he had Sonny with him, and she was so beautiful, and now he was going to be the hero of and this guy was there. But anyway, so I think you retest it. That happens, you know, you do spot talent or people that you like or people who you know are good players. And I cast I cast for their playability. They come to me as good actors. Some of them come to me because they're so right role it's scary. And some of them I have to join in conversation to find out, can they deal with my insane brain? Can they deal with the fact that they've got to make this work for themselves? I mean, I didn't do this in this, but I had a girl in a sitcom who was a pilot. It was a big pilot. And I was into the third day of rehearsal, and I finally went up to this young lady. I said, "Excuse me, young lady. This is the lead, by the way. What is it that you do?" And she said, "What do you mean, what is it that I do?" I said, "What is it that you do? I've been watching now. You hit all your marks. You sit when you're supposed to sit. You stand what you're supposed to stand. But I have no idea who you are. You're going to have to bring something." And she said, "Oh, I was waiting for you to tell me." I said, "Oh, no. That's not how it works. I don't tell you. You bring to me what you got, and I will help you shape it, make it better, focus it." And that was true. The only time it ever happened in my career that this lady was simply waiting for me to tell her what to do.
So you're sort of mediating these actors and kind of molding what's already really there.
Yeah.
Or letting it grow in the first place.
And play, but you know, that's the way I play the game. That's why when I got my Big Fat Greek Wedding, Tom said to me, "Remember how we used to work on Bosom Buddies?" And I said, "Of course I remember how we work on Bosom Buddies. I've been doing that ever since." He said, "Good. That's the way you should work on this show." He wanted me to know that that the ability for me to allow actors to play and find what it is they think would be opportune would be the key to this movie. And he was right. He seems to understand something about movies. He developed a career. I lost him somewhere along the way, but eventually he lucked out. He found me again. It's daunting having somebody as huge as Tom Hanks in your past. It's so bizarro is all I can tell you.
Do you guys still keep in touch at all?
Oh, yeah, we've been in touch all these years because when Tom and I did Bosom Buddies, we were the only married people in the company, and we were the only people with children. So every weekend we'd go down to his house for a barbecue. He'd come up. Colin, his son, took swimming lessons in my pool. Tom Hanks actually was practicing for the one with the mermaid, Splash. He was practicing for Splash. I came home one day to find him with full gear on, sitting at the bottom of my pool, trying to get used to being underwater.
What is he doing here?
Yeah, so okay. He's trying something out. He had all the gear on, the scuba stuff, everything. He was getting ready for it. But no, but that's what bonded us, the fact that we had the families.
Did you keep in touch with anyone after the Fat Albert movie?
No, not really, which is a pity. For a while, Danya Ramirez I kept touch with because she was starting to build a television career. She played the attractive Latina. I wish I could remember.
Lori?
Laura. Maybe. Lori, thank you. Yeah. Since you've seen it more recently than me. And no, they went on their own way. I had a little touch with Shedrack, who played Rudy, and because he knew somebody that I knew that he did, but there was no. If I had opportunities to hire them, I would have, but I didn't have any opportunities because by the time I came back to television after my 10 years of features, I was into the Disney stuff, and that was all with young kids for 7 years. That was the Shake It Ups and the all those shows.
Cody, right, or the Sweet Life on Deck.
Sweet Life on Deck. I did that. Dog with a Blog. I did a few of those Dog with a Blogs, and the dog was a wonderful animal. Truly wonderful animal, is all you can say. But I had a Full House dog too. We had Comet in Full House.
Right. It's been. And you're working on Fuller House, right?
I did a few Fuller Houses, and then it came down to a bit of a problem in that Jeff Franklin, the creator of Full House, who was given the job of running Fuller House until they fired his ass a few years later. But essentially, while he was there, he brought me in because he had to. Because I was the original director of Full House, had done 100 episodes. And I did very well for him. But what he didn't like was the fact that I took over the show. Mm. When I wasn't there, he was the main conduit to what was going on the stage. But once I showed up, and I'd been working with those actors for 5-6 years, 100 episodes, I became bonded. They became bonded to me almost immediately and no longer bonded to Jeff. And I think Jeff saw that as a threat and decided perhaps he didn't need me for another episode, and then they fired him. But by that time, I didn't know any of the creators, and I thought, just get out of it.
I see.
Well, it's good you came back to the Full House universe in the first place. A lot of people can't say that they went back to their old properties.
And I basically still in touch with Candace and still in touch with Jody, who's a very close friend. Stamos I stay in touch with.
John
actually, I hold on to them pretty good because they're the most recent of importance. Saget and I'll get together and schmooze. Couillet got his. It was a crazy show for a comedy about growing two little girls up. Those guys were insane. It was some major stuff going on there. Oh, and the one thing that Cosby and I demanded, you like this or won't care one way or the other, but Cosby and I demanded the tag to the movie. We wanted all those people, the older people at the grave of Fat Albert, the guy who actually died as Fat Albert, her grandfather, and we wanted that to be the final image of them leaving the grave, playing just like they did as kids, with her watching.
You kind of added.
We were actually going to ask you about this.
Yeah,
Graham, if you want to ask him,
I'd be honored.
Okay, I'll ask him. I'm sorry. Okay, so since you bring up the very ending of the movie,
yes.
First of all, it wasn't until Brandon and Brandon's brother explained the ending to me that because to me
he thought Fat Albert died. He saw Fat Albert, the name on the tombstone.
I thought he was dead.
Oh no, you were fat.
I was bamboozled.
I had to explain it to him.
Oh my God!
Because it was interesting. It's a
back
weird editing choice, in my opinion, because you have Fat Albert go back into the TV, and he's in the cartoon universe, and the very next scene is the tombstone, and I'm like, what?
Yes.
But it does say on the tombstone, quote, our Fat Albert. And it's established it was like her grandfather.
There's this.
This is supposed to. Obviously, the only person there in the final group that was real was Cosby's brother was there. That was his real brother.
Oh, really?
That was his real brother. Yeah, and another guy, the one in the wheelchair, was actually one of the best basketball players UCLA ever had. I remember his name. He played pro for many years, and Cosby knew him and brought him in. I don't know. Cosby picked a lot of those people at that point, but they were all second guesses. There weren't any of his except his brother.
Right, but I mean, what's important is what they represented.
Yeah, essentially they represented the real guys, who those characters, who Cosby had built those characters for his show Fat Albert out of, and now they were coming to the cemetery and to the tombstone of the guy who used to be Fat Albert, but he was essentially, her grandfather, and they're saying goodbye to him. And I thought that I don't know, I like it.
It is a very good way to end the movie. It pays homage to the cartoon.
It's the generational thing, that there were a group of people that had been represented in the cartoon Fat Albert, who now were saying goodbye to their Fat Albert, who just died about a week ago, remember? That's one of the reasons why our Fat Albert in the cartoon was so affected by when Laurie was crying, because there was that connection that was to be found out later on, that he was indeed patterned after her grandfather.
Well, there's that reason that he would come to her and not really to anyone else who's crying at the TV and having a problem. It's because he just happened to really have this connection. And I think that's something...
He didn't even...
That's something so sweet about the character of Fat Albert, is he who always, in the episodes of the cartoons, who always notice, okay, there's a certain issue going on, and he steps in and he tries to give his best and solve the problem, really.
Solve problems. That was his definition of character. And, Keenan just had that wonderful, sweet humanity about him, plus his craft to do comedy. But like I say, that's not really, it was his sweet humanity, because he was up against a few other people. Matter of fact, he was up against the guy who had been cast as Fat Albert in the previous incarnation. That didn't happen. And I felt that guy was too threatening, or there was something about his vibe that made me think that he was going to give me trouble in terms of fitting into the movie. And then when I saw Kenan Thompson, it was a no-brainer.
Right, I think you nailed it.
Do you remember
Fat Albert's a sweet kid?
Who that person was who was originally cast?
I do remember him very well, because he turned out to be a hell of a good actor, like I assumed he would be. And I think he wound up as a regular in one of these procedural television shows. But I don't even remember his name now. But it turned out he did develop a ongoing career. Let's call it an ongoing career, because he worked. He got shows. He was,
Well, good.
But he was really big. I mean, this guy was 6'4", he was really something else. I had to fatten up Keenan a little bit.
Well, I'm sorry. Also, wanted to ask about the fat suit. Was it difficult for Keenan to carry himself in the fat suit?
Or even the stunt people?
Yeah, that was easy. The hard part, he had to go pee. That was his hardest problem, going to the bathroom. Then he'd have to take off the suit. But once he was in, he never complained. I never heard a word of complaint about him concerning that silly suit of his. He just did it. He was a pro. Still is a pro, God bless him.
I just always remember him as either Keenan from Kenan and Kel or Good Burger. That's all I can see.
That's right. The fact is, he had that much work going for him before Fat Albert. And it was after that he got into Saturday Night Live. Pretty amazing. Okay, anything else, guys?
Now, this movie came out in 2004. It's 2020, so a lot of time has definitely passed. And a lot of movies that are that old could fall into obscurity. What would you want audiences to take away from this film now, seeing it, compared to maybe back in 2004?
Well, back in 2004 was a tough time. I think I'd explained this before, that just as we're about to get the movie out into the theaters, Cosby was on the air condemning black fathers and black parents for the fact that they were not raising their children properly. And basically, he pulled the plug on Fat Albert. He didn't know he was doing that, but we couldn't put him on the Tonight Show. He was supposed to be on the Today Show. He was going to be our voice. He was all that we had that had name value. He was going to sell Fat Albert, and he took himself out of that package. We couldn't put him on any of those shows because he was becoming concerned. He was being bashed by his constituents, the people who wanted to see Fat Albert. So my only hope is that if two things are problematical. How often what do you say about a piece of art that has to be separate from the person who created the art.
Right.
You have to throw away the art with the person so that everything Cosby did, 10 years of the Cosby Show, which was groundbreaking for African Americans, groundbreaking for sitcom, do we have to throw that all out because he turned out to be something of a questionable sexual predator? And the same goes for any artist who's caught up in that situation. I'm hoping that maybe if enough time has gone by and people who can now access the past as quickly as pressing a button, so that what used to be the past is no longer the past. The fact that right now more people are viewing Full House today in streaming than they probably did when I had it on the air is mind-boggling. It's truly mind-boggling because now we can access anything. So maybe people, there's a new generation. If they could get into Fat Albert the movie, I think they would enjoy the movie. And there's, I suppose, a chance that as they're fishing around for movies that they'd like to see, that maybe they'll come upon Fat Albert. But there's so much product, I don't know how it survives, to be quite honest. But they do. They need product. They need product. They need product. They need titles. They need more titles. They need stand-up comedy work. They need bios. They need documentaries. They need anything they can get on the air, that they can be done for a price.
Well, I definitely think it's definitely possible for that to happen with Fat Albert because there are a lot of movies, the movies that we grew up with. As we get older, we have like a retrospective take on them, and then if all it takes is one person our age talk about something on the internet, and it goes all over the place.
Right.
Like
listen. It would make me very happy if Fat Albert could get a bit of a renaissance and get seen for what it was as opposed to a remnant of some stupidity that Cosby came up with many years ago. But like I said earlier, is that it's a strange business, You get a gift like My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which was a gift, We had it was a 2-take movie. 2 takes and you were on, baby. If you couldn't get it done in 2 takes, you were getting cut. It was as simple as that. And these people stood up to the plate and they did their work. And because of it, this thing turned into a juggernaut. On the other hand, I had Fat Albert, which I think was a wonderful movie, who got no respect whatsoever because of the political problems of the day. And so I lost that one, but I gained My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I can't complain.
All I'm going to say is that
Absolutely.
Times change and people's perspectives do change. And you still have this movie with a lot of positive attributes when it comes to comedy and when it comes to actually having heart of a well-respected character. So who knows what the future holds for Fat Albert? It doesn't have to be over.
Everything is fascinating to me. It's your world. Please don't mess it up. Make it happen because it certainly isn't my world. Every 5 days it changes. And I have to actually be willing to keep up with it. It took us this long for me to figure out how to do Facebook chat. This is great, by the way. I like this.
Yeah, you did a great job.
This is very efficient.
I'm enjoying this.
Very Zoom, was that a disaster?
Zoom was no problem. So people would invite me to be Zooming. So I'd get up on my screen, Zoom, the host is coming in, we'll let you in, make sure my microphone was on, my camera was on, and then, just the same thing as this, but it's all very simple. This turned out to be so super simple. It was embarrassing that I was creating such a.
No, now you know.
No.
Now you know. It won't be a
for
problem
Zoom,
ever again.
there are passwords.
No, this one is easy. This is easy. But anyway, guys, it's been terrific talking to you. My heavens.
Mr.
Thank
Zwick,
you
it
so
was
much.
an
It's been a
absolute
pleasure. Yeah, we really.
Okay.
We can both agree on that.
Good. Okay, guys. Now, how do you get out of this thing?
We'd like to thank Joe Zwick for coming on to our podcast. It definitely was a huge honor, and it would really mean the world if you could check out Fat Albert, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, Full House, and all the great work he has made over the years. We'd like to thank you for listening in to our zany little podcast. If you want to hear more from us, and I really hope you do, we're on Spotify, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Anchor, SoundCloud, and YouTube. We also have a Facebook, a Twitter, and an Instagram where we have some nice fun posts. And believe it or not, we even have a website that's nonsensenewsnation.com. And if you want to contact us personally and talk to us about the Fat Albert movie from 2004, because as you know, we want to talk about it, you can contact us at nonsensenewsradio@gmail.com. That is nonsensenewsradio@gmail.com. Once again, I've been Brendan Ellis with Scott Honickman. We'll see you you on the next podcast. Stay super and peace.